Haiti's government took the first step to establish the Provisional Electoral Council, the only institution capable of organizing the elections. In the United States, heavy rains flooded much of Greater Miami, leaving many stranded and forcing the closure of Fort Lauderdale Airport. And in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, the president of Switzerland pledged to work for civilian victims of conflict in the east of the Congo. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm your new anchor, Heidi Maurel, from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We begin with the news. On Thursday, the Haitian government took the first step to establish the Provisional Electoral Council, the only institution capable of organizing the elections. In official communication sent by the cabinet of Prime Minister Ariel Henry to the president of the National Association of Haitian Media, Jacques Saint-Pierre, Henry assured that he would not publish the names of the candidates. These measures accorded to the correspondence in the result of the agreement to reach an inclusive process that will bring together the greatest possible number of compatriots for a lasting solution to the crisis. According to the consensus signed on December, the government must present to the High Transitional Council a list of 20 candidates from which the structure will select 9. This is the second occasion in which Henry tries to reconstitute the Electoral Council to organize the elections in the midst of security and violence crisis in the country. In Argentina, trade unions, social and political organizations mobilized in the country's capital to denounce the judicial and media persecution against Vice President Cristina Fernandez. The demonstrations take place from 8 p.m. local time at Plaza Lavalle in front of the courthouse. The date for rally was chosen in the framework of another anniversary of the judicial persecution against Cristina in 2016. In addition, it comes in the context of internal struggles in the front ahead of the presidential elections, and in the middle of a challenging economic situation following an inflationary increase and the indebtedness to the International Monetary Fund. The head of the UN verification for the peace process in Colombia, Carlos Ruiz Massieu, called for a process in the comprehensive implementation of the peace accords and called for de-escalation of the conflict through dialogue. Carlos Ruiz Massieu made a statement during the presentation of the most recent report on the peace process in Colombia before the UN Security Council. The document covered the period from December 27, 2022 to March 2026. The delegate highlighted the advancing issues that are part of the agreement, such as the integral rural reform and the ethnic chapter, as well as security guarantees for the signatories in the place of agreements. Ruiz recognized the importance of the total peace police promoted by the current Colombian government, going hand in hand with the promotion of dialogues with armed groups to broaden the scope of the process in the country.
The recent meeting between President Gustavo Petro and Mr. Londoño in Bogota, as well as the joint visit to the former territorial area for training and reintegration in Mesetas in Mera Department, in the wake of a serious threat by an illegal armed group against dozens of former combatants and their families, are an example of how the parties can work together to address the multiple challenges facing the process and to advance implementation.
This April 15 marks the 8th anniversary of the death of Uruguayan journalist and writer Eduardo Galeano. Leaders of the left remember Galeano as one of the promoters of the Latin American critical thinking. His work, aimed at the most vulnerable sector of society, were translated into 20 languages. In them, Galeano denounced the hardship suffered by the poorest, by the social elites, and explained the continuous conspiracies of the United States and Europe against the Latin American peoples from the 15th to the 20th century. This theme is one of the central axes of the Open Veins of Latin American, written by the Uruguayan author who served as a reference for several South American and Caribbean leaders, such as the Commander Hugo Chavez. Galeano passed away in 2015 as a result of lung cancer in the city of Montevideo. In Peru, the museum known as Place of Remembrance, Tolerance and Social Inclusion has been shut down recently. Analysts say this closure is politically motivated and that there are no technical reasons behind it. as argued by the authorities in charge of executing the controversial measure. Our colleague Ramiro Angulo has more.
The Museum for Remembrance, Tolerance and Social Inclusion, which opened in 2015 to reflect upon the terrorist violence Peru endured from 1980 to 2000, has just been closed following a disorganized municipal inspection procedure, which has raised suspicions of it being a political decision by the ultra-right conservative party Renovación Popular. That is the opinion of Sofia Macher, one of the former commissioners responsible for the Truth and Reconciliation Report, an account of the era of political violence in our country.
And it is because of that abrupt change and that irregularity in the decision of the municipality of Miraflores that one can speculate within reason that the decision was politically motivated so as not to have to make the report by Amnesty International public. For it was very critical of the government.
The Deputy Secretary of the National Human Rights Coordinator, Miguel Hugo, has criticized the statement by conservative Lima Mayor Rafael Lopez, who said that the Remembrance Museum has to be handed over to the police and the armed forces, a move intended to install a single narrative about the era of political violence, which, according to figures from the Truth Commission report, about 69,000 people died.
It is an affront to the victims of violence. It is an affront to the collective memory of the country. And it is sad to see the timid, almost apathetic reaction of the executive, with the Ministry of Culture issuing a statement saying they will be fixing the things that the municipality says are wrong, but didn't say a word about the quasi-censorship of the Amnesty International report.
For Gloria Cano, a lawyer for the Human Rights Association, spaces such as the Remembrance Museum are necessary to seek consensus, but she considers that measures such as those taken by the municipality of Miraflores undermines the right of citizens to know the history of a painful period for the country.
There is a segment that keeps turning a blind eye, a deaf ear, who wants to go against the current, against the truth, trying to impose their biases, and we find completely unacceptable that they intend to use the municipalities in which they have been elected to push their ideology.
For Macher, getting out of the present crisis in Peru will require the government to accept its responsibility for the recent violence and then host a national dialogue to bring back peace to the country.
Dialogue is only possible if the government honestly takes responsibility for its action and is willing to listen to what the communities are demanding. To the demands of people protesting, people are upset. Very upset. I think there is no chance for dialogue unless the government gives some indication that they are willing to show some honesty.
According to analysts, the Boluarte government joins the campaign by the traditional Peruvian right wing seeking to minimize human rights violations in the country. Since Boluarte took power, there have been some 70 people killed at protests against her presidency.
Ramiro Angulo Maquiavelo, teleSUR, Lima.
And with this story, let's take a short break. But first, remember you can follow us on TikTok account at teleSUR English, in which you will be able to see news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In the United States, torrential rain drenched most of Greater Miami, leaving cars stranded and forcing the closure of the school and Fort Lauderdale Airport until at least Friday. The National Weather Service said the downpour on Wednesday trumped 635 millimeters of rain in 24 hours on Fort Lauderdale, a coastal city of 180,000 people that was almost twice the almost of weather that set the previous record in 1979. The city declared a state of emergency and asked people to be patient as it worked to reopen flooded roads. Forecasters warned of possible flooding in metropolitan Miami because more than rain was forecast for Friday and the ground is already soaked.
We live in this street and everything is flooded. We live more than 40 years and never happened. So we have like 14 inches inside the house everywhere, up to the bed. And it's unfortunate, but we have each other.
We're renters, so thank God, and I feel bad for our homeowner. He's been great through this, but our plan of action is to evacuate. We can't stay in there, E. coli risks, all that. Literal poop in the water, can't live in there. So yeah.
In the United States, the FBI have arrested a 21-year-old Air National Guardsman in Massachusetts, suspected of being responsible for the leak of U.S. classified defense documents. Jack Teixeira was arrested at his home in the town of North Dixon by FBI agents. In Washington, the U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland confirmed the arrest, saying Teixeira was being held in connection with an investigation into alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information. Teixeira is believed to have been the leader of an online chat group where hundreds of photographs on secret and top-secret documents were first uploaded. The materials alleged by the Pentagon and U.S. Special Service in February and March focus on issues such as the approximated losses suffered by Ukraine and Russia since the conflict broke out, the weapons and equipment that Kyiv would need in the future.
That we do have stringent guidelines in place for safeguarding classified and sensitive information. This was a deliberate criminal act, a violation of those guidelines. And so, again, I think that's important to understand. Now, we will continue to do everything we can to ensure that people who have a need to know when it comes to this kind of information have access to that. We're always going to learn from every situation.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump is appearing in court for the second time on Thursday in a fraud lawsuit laid by the New York Attorney General Letitia James. After appearing last week in Manhattan for a 34-count felony enrichment, the mogul returned to court for a case in which he accused, along with 3 adult children and his business entities, of manipulating poverty values to obtain investments and loan proceeds over several years. Trump offered his first deposition in this civil fraud lawsuit last August, but invoked the Fifth Amendment more than 400 times, and is now unclear whether he will answer questions, according to the reports by The Will and CBC News. The state of New York is seeking $250 million in financial penalties and asked the court to provide the former president and Donald Jr., Ivanka, and Eric Trump from service and officers of directors in any corporation registered or licensed in that state. On Thursday, the U.S. President Joe Biden, during a visit in Ireland, said he's not concerned about the leak of highly sensitive U.S. government documents related to the Ukraine war and U.S. allies amid investigation into the matter.
Cool, we gotta move.
I'm not concerned about the leakages, and I'm concerned that it happened. But there's nothing contemporaneous that I'm aware of that is of great consequence.
teleSUR English continues to grow. You can now tune in from 35 different African countries through StarSat. Dial phone 161 and enjoy a Latin American alternative broadcast. One final short break and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. In the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Swiss President Alain Berset pledged on Thursday in the capital, Kinshasa, to work for civilian victims of conflict in the east of the Congo. Swiss President Alain Berset, whose country will preside over the UN Security Council in May, pledged on Thursday in Kinshasa to work for the civilian population victims of the conflict in the east of the Democratic Republic of Congo. We will visit camps for displaced people in Goma, capital of North Kivu province, where the M23 rebellion has displaced hundreds of thousands of people since the end of 2021. In Bukavu, in the neighboring province of South Kivu, we will meet with renowned doctor and Nobel Peace Prize winner Denis Mukwege.
I believe that this visit is indeed part of an excellent bilateral relationship that we have, but also within a multilateral framework in a relatively turbulent world. And we really want to focus on those who are among the main victims of situations of insecurity and displacement. We are talking about the civilian populations. That's what we want to do, to make sure that we bring the issue to the Security Council.
Congolese President Felix Tshisekedi said the return of displaced people is slow due to the slow withdrawal of the M23 terrorists. The president also stressed that there will be no any political dialogue with this group.
Those displaced by war. The situation of those displaced by war is still precarious. It's true that there have been. We are beginning to see people returning, but they are still timid because the withdrawal of the M23 terrorists is happening quite slowly. Here I would like to make a clarification and insist upon it, as it should be. There is no question here of political dialogue with this group. I say it and I want to make it clear. There will never be any question of it, simply because we know how those who destabilize us operate.
Sudan's military warned on Thursday of potential clashes with the country's powerful paramilitary force, which it said deployed troops in the capital and other cities. The military said in a statement that the build-up of the Rapid Support Forces RSF in Khartoum and elsewhere in the country had come without approval or coordination with the armed forces leadership. The note said the RFS measures have stirred up panic and fear among people, exacerbated security risks, and increased tensions between regular forces. The military informs it has attempted to find peaceful solutions to such violations to prevent any armed conflict with the RSF. The opposition between the chairman of the Sudanese ruling junta, General al-Burhan, and his deputy, General Dagalo, who leads the Rapid Support Forces, has brought the transition to civilians to a standstill. On Italy, boast of investment in Tunisia and help negotiating in an international monetary fund, while as Rome seeks to stabilize the North African country's economic crisis and extend the increased number of migrants coming into European nations. Foreign Ministry Antonio Tajani outlined Italy's efforts and pledged during a meeting with his Tunisian counterpart, Nabil Amar, who insisted that Tunisia has seen growing numbers of African migrants arriving from the Libyan border and needs economic help. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development says Tunisia is experiencing its worst crisis in a generation, with inflation hovering around 11% and food increasingly scarce. The government is negotiating a $2 billion to $4 billion loan with the IMF to cope with the budget deficits aggravated by the COVID-19 pandemic. As part of the activities to commemorate World Al-Quds Day, Syria hosted on Thursday multiple events in its capital, Damascus, and in the coastal province of Latakia. Let's see.
A salute to our brothers shelter at the Al-Aqsa Mosque is the title of the exhibition organized in Damascus by Syrian and Palestinian artists to commemorate the day. The participants depicted in their paintings the steadfastness and resistance of the Palestinian people in the face of the current aggressive Israeli escalation against the holy Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Palestinian faithful.
My participation in this exhibition comes from my unconditional support to the struggle of our brothers in occupied Palestine, and my painting embodies the great suffering that the Palestinians are currently living in the Al-Aqsa Mosque, as well as the pain and the bloodshed of the martyrs falling because of the criminal practices of the Israeli settlers and troops against the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Palestinian faithful and all the Palestinian people.
Art is among the tools of the Palestinian struggle in defense of the historical and legal status of the holy city of Al-Quds as its eternal capital. The artists claim that their works complement the battle their brothers are waging against the Zionist occupation regime in occupied Palestine.
This exhibition reflects that art is one of the forms of resistance to the occupation, as both the paintings and the artist's pen are complemented by the rifle, the stone, the machete, and the missile in the battle we wage against the enemy, which is not limited to the military aspect, but extends to the intellectual and cultural level in defense of our historical right in Palestine, Al-Quds, and our Islamic and Christian sanctities, headed by the blessed Al-Aqsa Mosque.
In parallel, the Cultural Center of Iran in Syria organized a Syrian-Palestinian Children's Carnival in the Syrian coastal city of Latakia, in which, with a youth musical event and an exhibition of children's drawing, the continuity of the struggle with the new generations against the Israeli occupation was reflected.
We announce on this day our strong condemnation of the savage crimes and inhuman practices committed by the Zionist occupation entity against our Palestinian brothers and against our Islamic sanctities in the holy city of Al-Quds, and to assure our determination to continue the struggle until the liberation of all occupied Palestinian territories, no matter how many sacrifices we have to offer.
Palestine is an Arab land that concerns me. It is kept in my heart and soul, and our duty is to defend it. And I, as a Syrian child, represent the thought of all Syrian children who are attached to the defense of the Palestinian cause and to stand united with our Palestinian brothers.
Through these activities, Syria ratifies its firm support to the just Palestinian cause, a position it shares with all free peoples of the world who, on the World Day of Al-Quds, unite in rejection of the expansionist policies of the Israeli occupation regime against the Palestinian nation.
teleSUR, Damascus, Syria.
And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I am Heidi Maurel. Thank you for watching.